Hello, Sex Therapy 101 friends. You notice I might have taken a break, but we're back and we're excited. And I'm really passionate about this new series that I'm going to be offering to all of you. I haven't disappeared. I've been working on some projects that are really meaningful to me. And one of those is a book for the public about my research about regarding long-term outcomes of consenting to unwanted sex or duty sex, as we sometimes call it. And in doing that, adding to my own research over the year, you'll see my hair change, my face change, because these were all recorded over the course of a year. And I wanted to talk to experts about the cultural implications or cultural beliefs or the cultural ideas among different communities in the US that might protect people against negative outcomes and that might actually kind of promote people into some of the more negative outcomes. And that is the series I have to offer you. I'm really excited. It's been really meaningful to me. It's been enlightening to me. It's really helped me make sure that this book is what I want it to be for all of you. So with no ado, here we go. This is going to be the intro for the whole series. And I'll give you a little bit of a bio for each, and then we'll jump into the recording of the interview. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Amy Furuyama, who is a Korean American immigrant, a licensed clinical social worker, a sex therapist in Orange County. She's passionate about working with Asian American and the BIPOC communities to help them reclaim their sexuality in a way that's empowering and life affirming. I appreciated her perspective so much. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Amy.
Yeah, I'm excited for this interview and looking forward to talking to you. So yeah, super excited.
I'm really grateful you consented and were enthusiastic and wanted to chat about this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
All
Thank you for reaching out.
right. So that first question is, you took a look at my research, which was super generous, and I was curious about from your lens of sexuality and relationships, how would you interpret this? Like, what do you see is happening with this research? How would you explain it, like with your clinical lens?
Yeah. So firstly, like when I saw your video about your research and saw the results of it, I just found myself just being like, wow, this really checks out with what I've been hearing also from my clients, that it was like I was like, oh, like even some of the quotes that some of your participants had said, it was like familiar words.
Right?
It
Yeah.
was like there was so much resonance in kind of the women that I've worked with.
Mm.
I remember there's this one quote, you mentioned that a participant said she just needs to give in to sex to just she'd rather do that than deal with his emotions. I was like, oh yeah, like I feel like I've heard that. So I think there was just so much again like um similar expressions that I've heard. And so
Yeah.
when I read about your research, it was like, oh yeah, like totally. Everything makes sense. Like I can see that happening.
Mhm.
And in terms of like what do I see happening in this research? I saw that, that I really wanted to educate my clients from what I kind of saw in your research so that it can be kind of enlightening for them and kind of like normalize that they're not alone. Because I
Oh,
think
sure.
so
Yeah.
many of, I think a lot of people, and maybe this has also been your experience in sex therapy, is that like people feel alone in their struggles. So I think like, wow, there's a research that kind of shares similar experiences and you're not alone. So I think it can be really helpful in that way. Like, hey, if you kind of continue in engaging in the duty sex, like it doesn't really bode well for your mental health in the long
Mhm.
run.
In the long run. Yeah.
Yeah, and that there could be some sort of like hypervigilance that could like kind of go on and any symptoms of trauma, like, ooh, this is serious. Let's kind of
Mm.
tackle this.
Yeah, yeah. It was interesting because I was like, oh, I've heard these things from my clients too. And I think it probably is really validating. I've gotten a few emails when I've kind of released my research that they said that. They're like, I thought I was the only one. It's really fantastic to be like, there's this 54% that is having a similar experience to me, but I never hear about it. And so I feel
Mhm.
alone. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Is that kind of what you meant by like what do you see happening in this research? Like what would I do with information?
Yeah, and also how do you interpret it? Like we've all got different theoretical orientations, right? So someone might be like, "Oh, this may be like kind of an existential crisis of who am I?" Or someone else through their own different theoretical lens might say, "This is what's happening," or it's a congruence issue, or it's a consent issue, or it's a yeah. We've all got those different trainings and different
Mm.
theoretical orientations, and just kind of curious how other people interpret it or see it. And
Yeah, yeah. I'm thinking of it from like also like a systems perspective. I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious about kind of how the system kind of play a role in women
Yeah.
experiencing this. So I think that's kind of where I'm coming from, especially with my population with Asian American women. I think just like even down to like their immigration, um, like when did you even move over to the United States? How integrated are you with American culture? Levels of acculturation. How are you embedded into your faith? There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of like religious communities in, especially for Koreans, like they're really plugged into the Christian church. So
Hmm.
kind of see kind of like how could all these different things also influence how now you are
Yeah.
responding to CUS. Is it okay if I say
Yeah.
CUS? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree. I'm an LMFT, so I'm rooted in systems, and so that makes total sense with me too, is how I was seeing this as bigger than just a personal issue, but that it's influenced by so much more. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's kind of where I came from.
Cool. Okay. So question two, you come from an Asian American background, you work with that population. What are some specific aspects of that community culture that might promote women to consent or encourage women to consent to unwanted sex?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I was thinking about this and I was thinking okay, maybe before I answer this question, I think it's probably important to share like my identities. So kind of share my
Thank you.
intersectionalities. So
Yeah.
I'm a 1.5 generation immigrant from South Korea. I moved to United States when I was 6 years old. Now I'm 39 years old, so I've been here for 33 years. I'm quite familiar with the American ways and the norms and all
Mhm.
that stuff. So I had a lot of time to acculturate to the society. So my answers will be kind of based on just kind of my own lived experience, and I want to
Mhm.
make it just kind of emphasize that this is my individual kind of what I've seen, and of course,
Thank you. Yeah.
my experience isn't going to be all the other Asian American women.
Hmm.
So just wanted to put it out there.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and also noting that with Asian Americans that there are like different groups, right? Like so there's
Mhm.
Koreans, Chinese, Japanese, Indians, Filipino, Vietnamese. So, but in maybe more of a general sense though, I think just in my personal experience and in my practice, with the Asian culture, there's kind of like this idea of like collectivism versus individualism.
Yeah, sure.
So it's kind of like what is for the greater good? What keeps the family unit in
Hmm.
harmony?
Hmm.
And sometimes, and that means that not all, but sometimes it means that women maybe are more of these caretaking, more traditional roles, and that there's really more defined roles in the culture. And I'm even thinking, at least in the Korean culture, there's a strong sense of hierarchy
Hmm.
and like this is where you belong. This is where you belong, and there's almost like levels. So, for
Yeah.
instance, in the Korean language, we have something called the honorific language. So down to the language, we have a language that we reserve for people who are older than us.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's kind of like, okay, well, if you're older, then I have to show respect. I have to kind of yield to
Mm-hmm.
someone who's older. And even to this day, when I see a Korean elderly person, like I have this instinctive to just like bow because that's
Mm-hmm.
what I was told, like you bow and respect your elders.
Yeah.
So like I think definitely like that's a huge part and how we have to also kind of keep the harmony of the family unit, which may sometimes mean that if you're struggling in your marriage, like kind of have to just suck it up and deal with it. Like don't
'Cause
like
the greater good would supersede what you personally wanted for yourself.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of like, do I have a voice here? Do I not? Well, I have to kind of just be, be in this role to make sure that, I'm being a good mother, a good wife. Um, like let me just yield to what my husband wants.
Hmm. And that's seen as virtuous or good, or the yielding is a positive virtue.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's just what you do to keep the peace and harmony in the family unit.
Mhm.
So like you don't even question it, like, oh, I should do what my husband tells me to do. And then there's of course the idea of patriarchy in Asian American cultures, kind of like men are prized, like they are number one.
Mhm. In
And
that hierarchy. Hmm.
yeah, yeah, like even like growing up, so I'm the oldest daughter and I have a younger brother. I remember just like fighting with my younger brother, and then my grandmother saw that I like pushed my brother. She
Hmm.
was so mad. How dare
Hmm.
you push the son? So she smacked me like, you don't do that to your brother. And I was like, I remember thinking, wow, like there's must be something different about me as a woman or as a female that I'm not allowed to show my distress with
With a
fighting
man.
with a brother. Yeah, because he
Yeah.
was surprised. And my aunt also had two daughters, and then she didn't want to have any more kids, but she said she felt pressured to try for another one because it wasn't, she only had daughters. So she had a third child and it was a son. So they stopped after that. But there's this idea like you must bear a son to carry on the last name, at least
Hmm.
in culture.
Hmm.
Like you must have that to carry on our lineage. So
Hmm.
there's that. So yeah, and just again, I mean, I'm more obviously more familiar with the Korean culture because I'm Korean, but in Korea, there's such high rates of domestic violence. It's like
Okay.
ridiculously high. Um, I think I read somewhere like 46% of DV cases against women were by intimate partners in Korea. And
Yeah.
it's it's so normalized there, um,
Okay.
where women are like, wow, this is just what happens.
Mm.
And if you have that kind of mentality and then you move to United States more recently, then that's very much ingrained into how you kind of relates in your relation in your marriage in your relationships. Like, oh, well, I guess like it's normal to be hit or it's normal to be abused. So like this sense of like, do I even have a voice here?
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
but the interesting thing is, it was actually in Korea, in South Korea, there was a movement that happened in the late 2010s, the 4B movement,
Hmm.
because women were so fed up, they're like pissed off. They're like, screw this. Like, we're tired of the domestic violence. We're tired of being paid less than men. So they kind of have this movements right now. I think you might have heard about it recently
I
with
have, yeah. But explain it, because
yeah, yeah, yeah.
nobody has.
So it's called 4B movements because the four B's, B is like it's a Korean word, so I don't know all of them, but it's like P1, it's like saying no to marriage, sex, dating, and having children. Like
Mhm.
these are the things women we will like no longer engage in because screw the patriarchy. So we're gonna like really like get back at you. So there are women who are just completely avoiding all that because they're so fed up with the violence against women. So
As a
I think,
form of resistance,
yes,
right? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, totally. Like we're gonna resist this. So they're trying to fight back, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm curious, like I'm curious like how that's gonna actually play out in the long run.
Sure. Yeah. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. So that's that. But yeah, I think definitely going back to what are some factors in how the community culture can promote CUS is like one's level of acculturation. When did you immigrate to the United States? How open is also the communication line in your family unit.
Mm,
Most of the time, it's not super open, at least in the Asian cultures where we're not talking about sex. Like it's all hush hush. You found out about sex through the media, porn, books, friends, right? So
mhm,
it's not really talked about. So there's a lot of stigma about that. And so we don't really know what's actually like healthy sexual boundaries, like how to
mhm,
have healthy communication, healthy sexual communication. Um, there's just complete lack of knowledge about body boundaries.
mhm.
So yeah, when we don't have all those things, it's gonna affect how you kind of are in the marriage as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And another thing that kind of came to mind was the interracial relationships and marriages.
Okay.
And I have some Asian American women, they are dating or married to a Caucasian male. So I am curious about sometimes the power dynamics they
Hmm.
play out in those relationships. There's something about kind of also those dynamics of how could interracial relationship maybe even affects possible CUS because one's lived experience as an Asian American woman may not align with kind of like someone who has a different culture outside of the Asian culture. Like I'd be
Hmm.
curious about that too.
Yeah. And let me see if maybe some of my thoughts are aligning with your thoughts of, do you think sometimes it's possible then for a Caucasian male to maybe exploit that known submissiveness of the Asian culture and like want that, be attracted to that, actively pursue that? Is that kind of what where you were headed with that idea of the interracial, or am I taking it too far?
I can see that happening.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even like if it's not conscious, maybe on a subconscious level,
Mm-hmm.
that could
Mm-hmm.
be happening. Because that is definitely true because Asian women are very hypersexualized. Um,
Right.
we are considered exotic, uh,
Mhm.
submissive, and we're even in a porn category, right?
Right. Yeah.
So what does that mean, right? So what does that mean? That can lead to maybe the sense of like dehumanizing Asian women, where um this is more like we're like objectified in a way.
Right.
And when Asian women are objectified, we're not going to be treated very well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're not going to be seen as someone who has a voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is really prevalent here in the United States, where I've heard even just like some people in like just what I've heard is like I've heard men say, like, oh, yeah, I'm really into Asian women because they
Mm-hmm.
seem like they'll just do whatever I want, or like they'll just, I'm just like, oh, that's so disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, things like that. I think definitely there's kind of like the cultural promotion of CUS through the um hypersexualization of Asian American women. And sometimes, yeah, maybe that could happen where whether some men know it or not, that they are maybe seeking maybe that type of dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing came to mind as I was thinking about it. This question was, I think another cultural component that could lead to the CUS is being able to note each ethnic group's cultural history. And this idea came to mind. So there's kind of like a conflicted history between Japan and Korea. So even as this is, I think it's still pretty recent, but in the 1930s to 1940s,
Mm.
Japan occupied Korea and they took tens of thousands of Korean girls and women to be comfort women.
Okay, this is new to me. I'm so glad you're
Oh,
teaching me this.
okay, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So the Japanese military wanted to have women to have sex with just at their disposal. Like, oh, I just wanna, and the Japanese military agreed to provide this for them, thinking that this will decrease um levels of rape and like,
Because
but this rape.
because we're
Yeah.
going to give it our stamp of approval.
Yeah,
It's no longer a
yeah.
problem.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
And they thought that it could maybe help reduce, I guess, like the amount of venereal diseases that were going around during that time. So let's just have like a place where you guys can all just have sex with women, so it's more contained. Actually, it backfired and it increased more rape and more venereal diseases. But anyways, so
okay.
um, this is a really huge pain point in the Korean history because Japan did not recognize that they held comfort women. They just completely say that didn't happen, like completely
Oh,
erased that this is actual historical events that happened.
mhm,
So there were tens of thousands of Korean girls and women kidnapped and forced into prostitution to serve as sex slaves for the Japanese
mhm.
military.
And called comfort women, right? Even the language was used to make this maybe noble or a good thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Mm,
Yeah, they're called comfort women. Like this is your role to comfort them in their sexual needs.
mhm,
So the majority of the women that were kidnapped and forced to sexual slavery are Korean girls and women, but there were also Chinese women, I think even some Japanese women and some other countries, but the majority were Korean women. And they estimate as many as maybe, I think 50,000 to like 200,000 girls possibly could have been in this situation.
wow.
So that just knowing that, I'm just thinking about how trauma is stored in our bones and our muscles and our bodies, and
Okay, yeah.
how this could maybe even lead to that intergenerational trauma
Mm,
where Korean women maybe are struggling with this idea that is my body really my own, or
mhm,
is it for in the service of someone else?
mhm.
Especially if there's this really traumatic experience, at least in our culture.
Yeah,
Um, I'm just, I think when I think about that, I wonder what could have been trickled down into the Korean woman today, where if there's like my ancestors were possibly, in sexual slavery. So
yeah.
how much of that messaging could get passed down generations to generations? And now let's say that someone who had an ancestor who was a sex slave, a prostitute, and is now here in the United States, and she's trying to figure out her own self and her identity, and now she's in a relationship. I would be so curious if there's kind of that remnants of that,
Mhm.
in her body where she's struggling to speak up and saying, no, I don't want to have sex with you.
Yeah,
I think that's what really kind of came to mind. And I'll be kind of curious, for kind of like the other groups, like Asian groups, like what is their history that is also being passed down to the women.
yeah, yeah. And I don't think it's too far of a reach. I don't know that we have data about that, but we do have data about the Holocaust and the generational trauma that's followed. And so I don't think it's too far of a reach to say the similar thing would be at play there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. And there are some surviving women, and there has been some memoirs where some people have written books about their experience. I haven't read it yet, but I think definitely just like even being able to acknowledge the cultural history of each groups and how that could even show up in CUS would be.
Mhm. It would be really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think just kind of another thing that I was kind of looking into online just because I was curious more about it after reading about your research. I kind of was like, I want to kind of read what's out there too. So I think I read that there with Asian Americans, there's also a later age of sexual debut. And
Mm,
there's more conservative ideas about sex and engaging in sex or sexual kind of things. So I think maybe I'd be curious if like kind of like the later age you have your sexual debut, then maybe you don't maybe have less time to be able to even practice like asserting your boundaries or speaking up because if someone's first sexual debut is now they're married, then like
hmm.
you don't in some ways you haven't been able to practice that too much, right?
Right.
So I think that could possibly play a role as well, just that
Hmm.
have a later age of sexual debut. But yeah, I think it's important because Asian Americans are also considered the fastest growing racial group in the United States, which
Hmm.
means that there are gonna be a lot more immigrants coming, like, people coming in to United States and immigrating to United States. A lot of Asian Americans, so that could also play a role in how they may show up in their own sexual kind of experiences here in the United States.
Yeah. 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 Did we hit your bullet points? This is fantastic. I really,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I think so.
Okay. Let me know if we didn't.
Yeah.
So then the third question was, coming from an Asian American background, working with Asian American identifying women, what are some things of the culture that might be protective that we could use that are already there to, um, you know, turn
Yeah.
it around at all or um, kind of protect from consenting to unwanted sex and its outcomes?
Yeah, you know what? I really struggled to answer this question.
Okay. Okay. They're like, not much. No, I'm just kidding.
No, no, really. Yeah. I was really like just like racking my brain. I was like, what are some because I think unfortunately I can only think about the negative things. Like
Yeah.
the negative things just like popped up immediately. I was like, oh yeah, this and this and this and this. But protective factors, I was like, dang, like what is protective? I really struggle with this. So I was really curious what other, maybe if you're also interviewing other Asian American sex therapists, like I'm curious what they would say. But like
Hmm.
I was like maybe possibly I mean this idea came to mind and I was like I don't know if I'm reaching here too, but I was like maybe because typically Asian Americans like we like value higher education. So
Yeah.
I'm curious with this value of getting higher education and like yeah like it's important to have that could there be a possibility that the more education one receives in the United States that there may be possibly a sense of more like openness or expansiveness and learning about different ways to maybe just even interact with
Hmm.
in a relational setting maybe much more sense of openness to be like yeah, this thing isn't working between me and my husband or my partner. Like, we got to figure something out and maybe educating themselves about, okay, well, let's read books. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Prioritizing, looking, learning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I think that was probably the one thing that came up for me. Maybe that and another thing possibly, but it can also backfire is if we do have kind of this sense of like let's create harmony within the family unit
Hmm.
um maybe sometimes it can work out in a positive way that there can be a sense of accountability. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh wow, I see that you're suffering so much. This is also affecting maybe the well-being of our family.
Mm,
Um, Maybe there's accountability from other people in the family unit or maybe your relatives. Maybe that could also lead to one maybe even seeking couples therapy because they're like, hey, let's figure this out. Clearly something's going on here.
yeah.
Maybe the sense of like trying to keep harmony in the family unit could be positive, but I was thinking the flip side of that is it can backfire where a woman can be like, oh, I need to keep harmony.
Right.
So let me just,
Because she's lower in that hierarchy, there's more of a likelihood that she'd augment herself to for the greater good than for the male to
yeah,
look at the female's distress and say, let's change things
yeah,
just because that hierarchy.
yeah, exactly.
Mm,
Yeah,
mhm,
said it beautifully. Yeah, I was thinking that too. Like in one way it can be helpful, in one way it cannot because
mhm,
like, oh, well, I don't want to sh rock the boat here. So let me just deal with this situation where I'm clearly not happy about having sex with my husband, but all these people count on me or like people are gonna be very upset if I speak up about this. So let me just try to deal with it on my own or
mhm,
see
mhm,
if see if it can be just dealt
mhm,
with between me and my partner. So
mhm.
um so yeah,
Like
but
less likely, but that is one value that could be used in a different direction, possibly in the future.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I was thinking we can help or maybe not help.
Hmm.
It's so like probably in very individual case by case. But yeah, that's the only thing that really came up. And then like what could be protective factors?
Awesome. Okay. If we go on to question 4, do you feel comfortable moving to the next one?
Yeah.
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 Okay. So, you're an expert in this field. What do you see as a solution for these women? How would you work with a woman? I don't know that you work with couples. I think you work with just individuals right now. Is that right?
That's a very few couples.
Few
Yeah.
couples. How would you work with this woman?
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of it is education.
Mm,
Educating. Again, like kind of as I mentioned, like normalizing that you're not alone
mhm,
and educating that for you to be able to navigate this, let's talk about, let's have some good sex education and psychoeducation around consent.
mhm.
Let's talk about boundaries. What does that look like for you? Let's talk about the sexual health principles. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah.
So kind of really incorporating all these things so they are able to have a more kind of holistic view in how they can navigate the situation instead of just feeling like, oh my gosh, like this really sucks and like I can't do anything about it. But I think there's so much empowerment with education. So just being able to be like, hey, this is how you assert yourself. Because I think
Mhm.
so many of the times they don't even know how.
Yeah.
Um, like one of my Chinese American female, she's once told me, she's like, I didn't know I have a voice.
Mm, mhm. Mm,
And
yeah.
there's tears in her eyes. I didn't know I have a voice. And I'm like, they're like cheerleader, like you can speak up. Like you are, you totally can. So like just being able to be there and tell them like you do have a voice, like you can assert yourself. And let's kind of learn more like baby steps on how to
Yeah.
get you there because I don't want it to be too like overwhelming for them because there's
Yeah.
very much ingrained in like how they have been functioning. So yeah, a lot of education. I think support is really big. I'm hoping to eventually start a support group for Asian American women here. Because I don't see any.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe some sort of like building intimacy for Asian American women here in Southern California, something where another Asian woman can see another Asian woman in the room and be like, "Wow, we're all kind of in this together," and
Mhm.
and I'm not alone and we can all support each other.
Hmm.
So being able to have like a support system, I think could be really helpful for women or a couple experiencing this for sure.
Hmm. Hmm. And I imagine that working on assertiveness skills would be more challenging with your population than maybe a Caucasian-born American girl, woman, right? Because we've already got maybe more messages culturally that's okay to be assertive, whereas the Asian American population, it might be harder to want to learn or
Yeah.
believe that it would be good for them to learn assertiveness skills or
Yeah, yeah, I could definitely see that. Yeah,
incorporating that into their value system might be more difficult.
yeah, yeah. It definitely can because they're not used to it. It wasn't
Mhm.
modeled to them growing up.
Mhm.
Modeling might be, oh, dad is, he's the breadwinner. He gets the final say. Mom defers. Although, I have actually had some clients who said it was maybe the opposite. But it, again, it's very individual, case by case. But yeah, for the majority, it's like, wow, I have a voice. Can I speak up? Or just being able to say, like, I am allowed to have boundaries. Like, yeah, you totally
Yeah,
can.
yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
I think that's and I think maybe also the reason why I went into this field was I couldn't find, and this is more of a personal thing, I couldn't find an Asian American sex therapist when I was looking for one. And
Yeah.
I was like, where are they? There are very few. And I mean, I found someone else and she's Caucasian, but she's amazing. I love her so much. But yeah, I remember just thinking like it'll be nice for other Asian American women to see a familiar face in a way,
Absolutely.
tell them these things. There's maybe more sense of maybe trust and
Yeah,
connection where, oh, there's a Korean American woman telling me how boundaries has helped her, and maybe it could help me too.
absolutely. Yeah. Mm. So a little bit of representation too in the field of in this area, especially sexuality for Asian
Yeah.
Americans to see other Asian Americans talking about sex, breaking the taboo,
Yeah.
learning assertiveness skills. Mm, hmm.
Yeah. And I think in the beginning I was a little nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm in some ways like presenting myself to the world as a sex therapist. And I noticed even my own stuff coming up, like, oh my gosh, I'm a little bit embarrassed. Like, can I really have an
Yes.
Instagram page with like talking about kink and fetishes and like what does that mean? And like what does it mean to have good sexual communication? Like I was like, I was a little nervous about doing that. But yeah, I was like, you know what, Amy, like this is the work. Like you just put
Mhm.
yourself out there in the universe and this will help others in their own sexual journey. So I was like, okay, just do it.
Absolutely. I totally resonate with that. I have that experience even to daily, because I have a Mormon background and it's deep stuff to say, can
Oh,
I
yeah.
post the word clitoris in a public forum?
Yeah. Yeah. Although on Instagram they're so censored, so you'll write clitoris or something.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Mm, awesome. Okay. And so clinically, what we see here, moving to that question 5, do you think this qualifies clinically as, in the DSM, hypoactive desire interest disorder, or do you think this is something else? You know,
Yeah.
because I've seen some people being like, oh, this is the diagnosis, so we just got to do desire interventions. And I'm wondering if you're like, yeah, pretty solid in that, or if looking at it more systemically has you leaning different ways.
Yeah, definitely a different way.
Okay.
Yeah, I read the question and I was like, oh, okay. So I think I also have kind of mixed feelings about the DSM, but I
Sure.
know why it's there. Like, yeah, we need some sort of criteria so people are maybe better organized in how they kind of do their treatment plan, and it's needed for like the billing and codes. So I get it, like why we have the DSM, but I, just kind of want to put it out there. I have mixed feelings about the DSM.
Yeah.
So, when I read your question, I was thinking, I think we shouldn't pathologize women's sexuality. So that's what came to mind. Like they're like it's kind of like in at least in your study, it seemed to me more like this is a woman's choice to um she doesn't obviously she's not thrilled to experience CUS, but I was thinking about kind of like what your research said, where kind of they're doing this in some ways as a I think it's like a coping mechanism, right? Like
Mhm.
this is a way where they're trying to survive and maintain some sort of sense of stability in their relationship. And it seems more like it is more, yeah, like a relational issue than like hypoactive. This,
Like a medical diagnosis of there's something wrong with you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm thinking like if we had to like give a code, then maybe like a Z63 relational issue. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think that and I'm not sure if it meets criteria for hypoactive desire, but I don't know. I'm actually curious, like, what do you think?
I know. I'm curious too about others' thoughts, but I think initially women and their partners come to me saying the woman has a problem, she doesn't want sex. And, they're like, it might be hormonal. And a lot of times, especially in this situation, I'm like, I think this is systemic and relational. And as much as we want to put all the focus on the woman to figure out how to make her want sex when she doesn't want to, I don't think it's I don't think it's a diagnosis so much as it's a systemic problem
Yeah, yeah,
that they arrived to together.
yeah, yeah, totally.
Because of the dynamics of the relationship or the culture or whatever. Um, and I might also see it maybe more as CPTSD
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
rather than low desire, where these coping mechanisms are her trying to do this difficult situation well and it not going well, right? Like it being more about coping and maybe, I mean, I was shocked that the majority of the women we interviewed, you know, when you score the PCLS, it was like 54% were having moderate to severe trauma responses. I'm like, I don't know that we have thought about sexual trauma this way before, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Yeah. And that hopefully we can do something about that too, so that it doesn't get to that point for the woman, right?
What would you say if, I'll use that magic, overused question, but if you had the magic wand, how would you what would you wish for younger Asian Americans to kind of prevent this from being part of their story or part of their experience as they navigate their adulthood and their relationships?
Yeah. Does this is this a segue kind of to the questions?
Yeah, yeah, six. Yeah, what do you
Yeah.
wish you could do, or what do you think the solution is for that, like the prevention?
Yeah. Yeah. And when I read that question, I actually noticed my body felt sense of overwhelm
Oh, yeah.
because I think I so badly wanted to be more of how can we have a solution for women to not even experience the US in the first place?
Mm, mm-hmm.
And I was like, I think that's what I really would want. If we had a magic wand, it was that that we're not even having women experiencing this in the first place. Then but then that got me thinking, like, if we don't want women to even be in that situation in the first place, then like I feel overwhelmed because I was like, we have to tackle like these big systemic things, which is like the like patriarchy and sexism and like racism and like gender roles. And I was like, oh, and I was like, okay, Amy, like calm down. so, so I was like, okay, narrower scope, narrower scope. So I think the thing is that we have to do, at least I think, for Asian American women to kind of help them is, I think, again, going back to the solution of like being able to provide good, accurate sex education. And not when they're teens, but when they're starting as a baby. Like
Mm-hmm.
babies and teaching the moms too about body boundaries, consent,
Mhm.
having the kids be able to name their body parts,
Mhm.
uh, um, teaching women so that they can quickly discern what they're experiencing is coercion or not coercion, and knowing for themselves what's okay and what's not okay.
Mhm.
Communication, like, and just like being able to have all of that, I think could be so helpful, not just Asian American women, but just for everyone in
Mhm.
all of the United States. I think could be a really good step. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, that's why we do the work we do, right?
Yeah. And I like that you painted that as a developmental thing, not a do this one thing this one time, but you see it as this prevention be really developmental with messages all along the way. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Because I was even when I was thinking about like what could babies be, how can babies be learning about consent and bodies? It goes back to the parent. The parent is also modeling to them, hey, it's okay that you're curious about your genitals. I'm not gonna shame you for kind of getting curious and touching your penis or your vulva. Like this is part of healthy exploration versus smacking the hand and say, oh, dirty, dirty, don't do that. Because
Yeah.
even as that early of an age as in their baby states, like these are the things that we kind of carry with us through our entire life.
Mhm.
So how do we teach that? Well, then the parents also need some good sex ed as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
carries on their whole, like you said, yeah, the developmental piece is
Mhm.
absolutely
And generational. I like that you brought it to that too. Yeah.
yes, for sure.
Yeah.
So all of that. Um, yeah, so like um also bringing being able to create sense of support and community with for the Asian American women and sex therapy, teaching communication skills and all of that good stuff. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm. Do you see this wasn't, I didn't give you this question. So it's okay if you hadn't thought about it, but do you see the Asian American community becoming more open to these ideas of a little more individualism, a little more assertiveness, more consent between genders?
I think definitely more the younger generation for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I see more of my clients are more in the 20s to 40s age range, and a lot of them are first-time therapy seekers. And
Mm-hmm.
then they're like, I heard on TikTok that maybe therapy might be good for me or Instagram. And sometimes the younger generation, they're like empowered, like, I want to break the generational trauma that my ancestors have carried on. I want to be the one to do that. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
So like when I see that, it's so like, wow, it's really
Mm-hmm.
inspiring. And there's definitely a little bit more sense of openness when I we talk about consent and healthy sexual communication, because they're like some like sponges, like they want to learn more
Mm-hmm.
because they want typically the what I've seen is they want to have a more positive and a better life experience than what their parents had to go through because they
Yeah.
see their parents just holding on to all so much traumas from the immigration, like escaping communist countries, escaping war, and they're like, wow, wow, this is really affected my parents and it's affected me too. And I'm carrying all these traumas myself, but I want to be the one to kind of change that. So
A lot of courage, a lot of determination in that younger generation in the community.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think definitely more openness. So
Mhm.
with at least the younger generation, I do think there could be some changes with maybe the older generation, but I think definitely the younger generation is a little bit more like expansive and open to these things.
Okay. Thanks for letting me throw a question in there.
Yeah. No, that's a
And
great.
then, yeah, and then the last one was like, do you have any op-ed commentary as you watched the video and maybe you thought about the idea? You could have had completely fantastic ideas outside of what I was thinking. I don't want to be looking at this really from like a vacuum personally. And so did you have other thoughts or like op-ed commentary or things that you thought of with this kind of new idea or new angle?
Yeah, I actually, it was maybe more of a question. My
Mm-hmm.
question was, in the study, um, I think you kind of distinguished what coercion means. I think it was like, was it verbal coercion, but no physical coercion, right?
Yeah, yeah. And that wasn't necessarily my work. That was borrowing from, I think it was Zoe Peterson, who's at the Kinsey Institute, or else it was Muhlenhard, but they did a research study about coercion being on like a spectrum,
Oh,
and that like forced physical coercion was on the most damaging end, but then coercion can also be verbal and emotional
okay.
um, on another end. And they're like, does this still create damage? That was kind of their question at the end of their research. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna see.
Yeah.
And then I found an assessment of verbal coercion, and it had like 10 examples of, after you've said no. I think it's called the post refusal scale. And so it was only looking at verbal coercion of tactics that I think a lot of people don't recognize as coercion, where they keep asking, keep asking, keep asking, or they disregard it and start taking off your clothes, or they might pout and kind of throw an emotional fit, or they may make a claim to authority of, I'm the breadwinner, or and so then the study, it kind of showed which
Uh,
percentage of our population saw which kind of verbal or emotional coercion tactics used.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was just kind of curious, like, do the women even know what they're experiencing is coercion, or were they,
I
yeah,
don't think so. That's why I asked it. Like,
yeah.
that's why at the beginning of the study, one requirement, I was like,
No history of
we've
sexual violence, right?
we've got to assess for coercion that's not recognized
Yeah.
so we can see if it was truly consensual. And
Right.
I think only 18% of those research participants had none of the emotional or verbal coercion
Mhm.
as present in their relationship. I was like, oh my gosh, okay. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, and I mean, I think I really loved all the quotes that you brought into the studies, like the participants' quotes. It really brought in the sense of like realness to their experience. And I remember just reading all those quotes and just my heart breaking. I'm like, oh my gosh, like so sad that, this is the realities of many women out there. And just really, yeah, I really felt like this research study was so important, and like I want to share this to my clients, like, hey, this is what could happen, and I know you want to have a good marriage, so let's work on these things. And maybe that could also lead them to be more motivated, like, hey, this isn't something that you just wait until decades have passed, especially if
Yeah.
it's more of like 20s 40s age range. Like, this is something that you can actually work on now for the longevity and the health of your relationship. Like, let's tackle this now. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It could be kind of a warning bell, or here's why it's not a good strategy in the long run. Is you think you may be helping your relationship, and in the long run, it's going to hurt you, possibly.
yeah, 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 exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I I wish I could publish a book that was just the responses of the women, because that was the most powerful for me too, and the most beautiful and the most relatable. And sometimes in research we forget that there are people behind the statistics.
Mhm.
And that was the most important part to me in the study, was their own words. Yeah, I'm glad they touched you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I'm so glad you did this research, because just like certain faces of my clients just popped to mind.
Mm,
It's like, oh yeah, well, I remember that client said, she actually used the word duty sex. She said, I just provide duty sex, and I just see how long they can hold him over till the next time.
mm,
And this is very intelligent Asian American woman, like highly educated and in her 30s. And I'm like, oof, that's not good for you guys. So, oh
yeah.
yeah, so we got some work to do, but
Yeah. Any last thoughts before I let you get back to your,
Uh,
your own life?
no, I think I actually had a question, but I have a client coming
Mhm.
in 2 minutes. But
Okay.
I think the last question was just like I was curious really about the level of maybe how one identifies in their religious faith in,
Hmm.
in these settings, just because I work with a lot of women who have had upbringing in the Christian church and
Hmm.
have stayed in the Christian church or they've deconstructed from it. So I was just like, I was just kind of curious about that. But
Agreed, agreed. Most of the demographics were homogenous, where this was mostly educated, white, cis, Christian women. And I've got that question too,
oh no,
is this a religious issue? Is this a US issue? Is this kind of a female issue? And so that's why I'm reaching out to these different communities to be like, do you see this here too? Is this a white woman issue? Is this a purity culture issue? Because the demographics were so similar. I
yeah.
hope someday the research will be replicated, maybe with diverse populations, but until then, I'm just trying to learn from all the communities around me of what do you think? The experts in those communities. What do you think when you look at this? I've got the same question. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much. I really found it so enjoyable to kind of look into your research and do this with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate it. I loved rubbing shoulders with you. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
yeah, likewise. All right. And
Okay.
if you have any other questions, feel free to just shoot me email and I'm happy to respond. Any other
Okay.
questions?
Thanks, Amy. Have a good
Take
day.
care. Bye. See ya.
Bye bye.